It's hard to believe that less than 3 years ago I had not started this project. It was just a spark of the imagination at the time. What started as a lockdown project soon spiraled out of control, and the hours spent on this build soon became 4 digits. Originally the plan was to build something that I couldn't just buy, being a small compact all-wheel drive car. The now Peugeot morphed into what it is, with no rulebook and with the limit of imagination and ability. Documenting the build as I go along has been nice, and in a way has made me accountable for keeping up the pace day to day building the car. We are so close now to getting this thing moving under its own weight, and once we get the tuning done very soon, then we can try and get the car registered for the road and get some miles on it. As far as I'm aware, there is no other car like this. There has been a 206 WRC with a GC8 floor pan. It was online some time ago, so I'm not sure if that thing is running yet. It will certainly be interesting to drive a short wheelbase Subaru. I look forward to sharing more content of the evolution of this build and ultimately see where the Peugeot can get to. Just in case things get a bit spicy. So it's about 80 degrees. Basically have no brakes. Welcome back to the series. If you remember at the end of the last episode, I had an issue with the cooling system. The expansion bottle, which I've placed at the back, that goes into the top of the radiator, was just overflowing constantly and running the coolant out of the system. So I'm going to have to shut it down. As the radiator is in the boot, I have changed the layout of the overflow and coolant lines. So the mistake I have made is that one of these pipes that come off the header tank originally went straight to the expansion bottle, and that should not be pressurized. The pipe that feeds the expansion bottle is being pressurized. I need to get one of these to the expansion bottle and then blank this pipe that goes to the radiator and go for another test. Firstly, I need to get this bottle off and see if I can fit it at the front anywhere. Don't really have a choice because otherwise this pipe will have to be seriously long and it will probably cause me other problems. I'm thinking for now it can fit down here just so I can test the system and see if it works. Just for the test, I've extended the hose and we'll see how we get on. I'm just checking that the battery's charging properly. It is, 14.3. That's the problem. That is a problem. Fan seems to be doing a good job of keeping things at a good temperature. We still have no temperature on the gauge though. In theory, as it cools down, it might draw some of the fluid out of the expansion tank, and I don't want to take this off because it's still pressurized. I don't fully know the level of this, but we can monitor it. I have just put the wheels back on. The plan now is to drop the back of the car down to ensure the header is the highest part in the cooling system. That should eliminate all the air out the back of the car. I'll partially drop the rear and then run it up. Before I lower the car, I'll get the tow straps attached to the back. That should help. So I think this setup is much better. As it cools down, I'll see what is drawn back into the system. I've just marked up the level. Now when it goes cold, I'll take the fluid out so it's on the minimum line. Then we should be somewhere near. I also have to think about the extra capacity in the water system. I may leave it a bit more in to allow a bit of tolerance for the added capacity. It's back on the ground. Let's go for the first drive. Basically have no brakes. Reverse. Forward. Does not feel great, so I'm going to stop. But it moves. I think the brakes might be sticking on. So I've just pumped the brakes up, and now it's squeaky coming from the brakes. So that's something to look into. Well, the clutch works. So I think I'm going to try bleeding the brakes again. The next thing I really need to do is get the temperature gauge working. First thing to do is to test the sensor, which if you remember I forgot to put in originally. So all of this, the water problem, was a stupid mistake. So this time, instead of taking the head off, I'm just going to take the alternator back off. I can quickly take the sensor out, plug it so the water doesn't come back out, test the sensor and then replace it if it's no good. It's going to be hard not to make a mess. Now I'm going to test the temp sensor by checking the resistance across various temperatures of water. Get them in the right order. Hopefully it's not going to melt the cup. Might do. So it's about 80 degrees, 63, 40 for example, and that's about 10 in the cold water. So it gives me a baseline. I think the sensor is working, so unfortunately for me there could be an issue with the wiring or even a problem with the dial on the cluster, which is probably going to be harder to sort than just replacing this sensor. I'll do a few more tests to make sure I'm happy that this is working. See how the numbers consistently going up as it's getting colder, and then I'll drop it in the hot so it should drop down. Yeah. Anyway, I'm pretty sure this works. We can get the sensor back in the car. Just a quick update as the camera died. I have continuity tested the wires that come from the sensor back and through the engine loom to the main harness. I've connected the power and we have power going to the sensor, presumably from the ECU. So it's starting to look like it could be an issue with the dial on the speedo. Simple solution would be to put an aftermarket gauge on for now, just so we know what the water temperature is while it's being tuned. And eventually I could try and sort the one on the dash. At least we know the sensor's working and it's getting power, so we're a step closer. I figured now is as good a time as any to get a fire extinguisher, just in case things get a bit spicy. I need to bleed the brakes again. This time I will unwind the bias valve all the way, so it should be as free flowing as possible. Also, I'll simultaneously pull the handbrake as I push the foot pedal down to get air out of the hydraulic handbrake. Down on the foot brake, on the handbrake, holding, and then smooth back on the handbrake and off on the foot brake. I have bled the brakes with the handbrake and there's no air left in the system. There was some air in both rears, so hopefully once I get it up and running, it will be cured. I now have the mechanical temperature gauge and I've just checked if it will fit in the OEM position. Unfortunately, it's a different size. So for now, I've cleaned the sensor up. I've checked all the wiring, so I'm going to plug it all back in. It may work on the dash now, if I'm really lucky. If I leave it all plugged in and then plumb this in somewhere else, I have an option to fix the factory gauge. I've come to the realization the only place I can fit this is on this adapter piece I made up for the top hose. However, to make the boss that holds this, I need a 5/8 nut, which I don't have and will struggle to get over the bank holiday. For now, I can put the alternator back on, put the belt back on the pulley. I can run it up, test the brakes, and then think about getting the gauge installed next week. Managed to find some 5/8 UNF nuts. I just hope they fit. That's great. So now I can make a boss to fit this manual temp gauge. I'm going to weld the boss for the sensor on this part here and swap the pipe that was on here to that one there. We'll let that cool down for a minute. So when I go to put the sensor in, I need to make sure it's not going to bottom out. By the time the smaller nut is welded on the outside, it's going to sit around there somewhere, so that should be a good indicator of temperature. I've just tacked it in place so I can just check it fits. For now, I'm just going to cable tie the gauge. I don't know where I want to put it permanently, and I may not need it permanently if I get the factory gauge working again. I just need to feed the sensor through into the engine bay. Get the gauge the right way around. It's not pretty, but it'll work. Now this piece is cooled down, I can get it back on the car. Before I get too carried away, I'll get some more coolant back in. Sure enough, we have a leak. I'll take it back off and I'll have another look and then we'll try again. Attempt 2. It's weeping water still. I'm not entirely sure where it's coming from, but obviously when it comes up to temperature, it's gonna be a massive problem. So I'll take it back off and then I'll try and work out where the leak's coming from. And then I'll try it for the third time. Third time lucky, eh? This time it's coming from the sensor. I double washed it because the other one was getting quite crushed because I've taken it in and out a few times. So perhaps I'll take one of the washers out and then see if it reseals. Is it fourth time lucky? I'm gonna run out of fingers soon. Still leaking from the temp sender. Perhaps I need a bigger copper washer. I think I may have stopped all the leaks. So we've got some temperature on the mechanical gauge. It could be from a wheel, to be fair. Hopefully it's not the prop. Water temp's just slowly rising at 50 degrees now. Fan at the back and the water pump's doing a good job. What I wanted to check was if the speedo's working. That's good news, the speedo's working. So at the moment, I just have that on the display. The mechanical. So at least I have something. We're now sat at 70 degrees. I've just shut down and the temperature wasn't getting over 70 degrees. I have noticed that the back of the external water pump is red hot. I'm wondering if it's being laboured too hard because the thermostat won't open at 70 degrees and there's only 2 3mm holes in the thermostat wall. So I'm tempted to take the thermostat out and see what it's like running an open system and then monitor the temperature of the pump. That's it for this episode. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you very soon.